The first time I saw Maren Ellis, she was standing in the rain at the end of my gravel drive with one suitcase, no coat, and a diamond ring pinched between two fingers like it had burned her. It was nearly midnight. On a ranch, midnight has a sound. Wind whirring the barn doors, horses shifting in their stalls, rain ticking against the porch roof like 1,000 impatient fingers. I was in the kitchen, eating a cold roast beef sandwich over the sink because 34-year-old men who run cattle alone do not always make dignified choices. Then my security light snapped on. At first, I thought it was a coyote near the feed shed. Then I saw her through the kitchen window. A woman in a cream dress, soaked through, dark hair stuck to her cheeks, staring at my house like she had driven across the state on nothing but nerve and one bad idea. I grabbed my coat and stepped onto the porch. "Ma'am," I called. She flinched. Not dramatically, just enough to tell me she had been bracing for a man's voice all night. "You're Daniel Hayes?" she asked. "That depends who's asking." She swallowed, lifted her chin, and held up the ring. "I'm either making the smartest decision of my life," she said, "or I'm about to find out my grandfather was a terrible judge of character." That was not the sort of sentence a man expects on a Tuesday night. "My condolences to your grandfather," I said, walking down the steps. "But if you're planning to rob me, you picked a bad night. I've got one sandwich, two tired horses, and a coffee maker that's been threatening to quit since Easter." Her mouth twitched. Not a smile, exactly, but close enough to make me notice. Even soaked and trembling, she had a steadiness about her, the kind that didn't come from having an easy life. Her eyes were gray-green, sharp and exhausted, and she looked at me like she was hoping I'd prove her wrong and afraid I wouldn't. "I'm Maren Ellis," she said. The name hit me with the force of a boot to the chest. Ellis. I knew that name. Not from her, from my father's old stories, from my grandfather's kitchen table, from a man named Walter Ellis who'd worked the neighboring ranch before I was born and later came back every summer to help my father mend fences even when his hands had started to shake. Walter had been the kind of man people got quiet around, not because he was cruel, but because he never wasted words. "You're Walt Ellis's granddaughter," I said. Her face changed, just a little, like hearing him called Walt had opened a door she'd been leaning against for months. "You knew him?" "I knew of him. He and my dad were close." I glanced at the ring in her hand. "You want to come inside before that storm finishes what your day started?" She looked past me at the warm square of kitchen light, then back at me. "I'm not here to be rescued." "I didn't say you were." "You were thinking it." "I was thinking you're shivering hard enough to rattle your teeth and my mother raised me to offer towels before lectures." That time she did smile. Small, reluctant, dangerous to a man who had spent 2 years convincing himself quiet was the same as peace. She followed me up to the porch, her boots leaving wet prints on the boards. When she stepped inside, she paused at the doorway like she expected the house to reject her. It was not much of a house. Old pine floors, a kitchen table scarred by 3 generations of elbows and coffee mugs, a wood stove in the corner. My father's hat still hanging by the back door even though he'd been gone 11 months. Maren saw it. The hat, the worn brim, the dust line on the wall where it had hung forever. "You lost someone," she said. "My father." "I'm sorry." "Me too." For a second, neither of us moved. The rain filled the silence. Then, I cleared my throat and pointed down the hall. "Bathroom's there, towels in the cabinet. I can find you something dry, it'll be too big, but unless you prefer hypothermia as a fashion statement." I've worn worse for men with less charm. I stopped mid-step. She froze too, like she hadn't meant to say it aloud. Then she looked away, and the diamond ring disappeared into the pocket of her soaked dress. I found her a pair of sweatpants and one of my old flannel shirts from a feed company giveaway. When she came back into the kitchen wearing them, sleeves rolled to her, wrists, hair towel dried and curling at the ends, I had to look down at the coffee pot longer than necessary, because she looked like she belonged there, which was a ridiculous thing to think about a stranger who had arrived in a storm with a ring she clearly wasn't wearing. "Coffee?" I asked. "Do you have tea?" "I have coffee that's been emotionally supportive since dawn." "Then coffee." She sat at the kitchen table, both hands wrapped around the mug I gave her. I set a plate with the other half of my sandwich in front of her. She eyed it. Is this a peace offering? It's either that or dinner. You always feed women who appear in your driveway? Only the ones who insult my grandfather's taste from the county road. That earned me another smile, warmer this time. And there it was. The trouble. Not lust, not some foolish thunderbolt nonsense. I'd been around enough pretty faces to know attraction could lie. This was different. Marin carried grief like a blade tucked under her ribs, but she still had humor, still had pride, still looked directly at me when most people would have performed helplessness to get what they needed. I respected that before I understood it. So, I said, leaning against the counter, why did Walter Ellis send you to my ranch? She didn't answer right away. Her fingers tightened around the mug. My grandfather died 3 weeks ago, she said. Before he passed, he gave me a letter. Told me not to open it unless I found myself standing at the edge of a life I didn't choose. I looked at the ring pocket. That life have a name? Preston Vale. Even the name sounded expensive. Fiancé? Technically. That's a painful word. So is wife when it's being used like a merger. I stayed quiet. She stared into her coffee. My parents think Preston is perfect. Good family, good money, good image. He doesn't hit. He doesn't drink too much. He remembers birthdays. On paper, he's flawless. But I feel smaller every time he says my name. That landed harder than I expected, because my own almost marriage had ended for the opposite reason. Lisa hadn't tried to shrink me. She just looked at the ranch, at the debt, at my father's illness, and decided love shouldn't require mud on your boots. I didn't blame her, not anymore, but after she left, I stopped asking anyone to stay. Marin looked up at me. My grandfather told me there were men who built rooms around a woman instead of walls. I felt something shift in my chest. That sounds like Walt. He also said your family was the only honest family he'd ever known. I snorted. Then he didn't watch my dad negotiate cattle prices. Her smile came easier now. He said honest, not easy. Fair. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the ring. Set it on my kitchen table between us. It looked wrong there. Too bright. Too cold. I left tonight, she said. Engagement party, country club, 200 people. My mother cried in the powder room. Preston told me I was embarrassing him. What did you do? I apologized. My jaw tightened. She saw it. Don't look like that, she said softly. Like what? Like you want to go teach a man manners. I was only considering a strongly worded conversation. With your fists? I'm versatile. She laughed then, a real laugh. It startled both of us. For one clean second, the storm, the ring, the dead grandfather, the life she'd run from, all of it lifted. She was just a woman in my kitchen wearing my flannel, laughing into bad coffee, and I was just a man remembering that warmth could still happen unexpectedly. Then the laugh faded and she whispered, I don't know why I came here. I pulled out the chair across from her and sat. Maybe you needed a place where nobody had already decided who you were supposed to be. Her eyes softened. That's a dangerous offer, Daniel Hayes. Why? Because if I rest here, I might not want to leave. The room went quiet again, but it was not the same quiet as before. This one had a pulse. I noticed how close her hand was to mine on the table, how her sleeve had slipped over her knuckles, how the rain had left one damp curl against her throat. I should have leaned back. Instead, I said, then we'll make sure whatever you choose next is actually yours. Her gaze held mine. Not grateful, not helpless, searching. Then she reached into the pocket of my flannel and pulled out a folded envelope I hadn't noticed she'd tucked there when she changed. My grandfather wrote 2 lines at the end, she said. I thought they were ridiculous. She unfolded the letter with careful hands. The paper was creased, rain-soft at the edges. Ink faded but readable. Marin stared at it for a long moment before her voice dropped to almost nothing. He wrote, Daniel Hayes needs a wife more than he knows, and my Marin needs a man like him before she forgets what a real one looks like. I forgot how to breathe. She looked up at me, cheeks flushed, eyes bright with fear and challenge, and something I did not dare name yet. My grandfather said I needed a man like you, she whispered. And before I could stop myself, before caution or grief or common sense could get a hand on my collar, I looked at the ring on my table, then back at her. Maybe he wasn't wrong. That was when headlights swept across my kitchen window. For half a second, neither of us moved. Marin's eyes stayed locked on mine, her grandfather's letter trembling between her fingers. The headlights washed over her face, turning the fear there silver. Then a car door slammed outside. She stood so fast the chair scraped the floor. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I rose too. Then maybe it's not for you. A second car door opened. A man's voice cut through the rain. Marin! Her face emptied, not fear exactly. Recognition. The kind that comes when a cage learns your name. Preston? She breathed. I looked toward the door, then back at her. Do you want to see him? That question seemed to surprise her more than his arrival. She blinked. What? I asked if you want to see him. Nobody asks me that. I am. Outside, boots hit the porch steps. Marin's hand closed around my wrist. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't helpless. Her fingers were cold, and her grip was certain. No, she said. That one word settled every question in me. I turned toward the door just as Preston Vale started pounding on it. Marin, open this door. My house had stood through hailstorms, drought, and 3 generations of Hayes tempers. It did not shake for men who thought money made them thunder. I opened it before he could pound again. Preston stood on my porch in a tailored overcoat, rain sliding off him like the weather was beneath his dignity. He was tall, polished, handsome in the way expensive watches were handsome, impressive until you needed warmth. His eyes moved past me and found Marin in my kitchen. There you are, he said, relief turning quickly into irritation. Do you have any idea what you've done? Marin stepped closer behind me, but not hidden. I left, she said. His jaw tightened. You embarrassed both families. She answered your question, I said. Preston's gaze snapped to me. And you are? Daniel Hayes, this is my house. I don't care if it's the governor's mansion. My fiancé is coming home. Marin's grip on my wrist tightened. I didn't raise my voice. She said no. Preston gave me a smile that had never had to earn kindness. This is a private matter. Then you should have handled it privately before following her through a storm. His eyes hardened. Marin, get your things. She let go of my wrist. For one awful second, I thought she might obey out of habit. Instead, she walked around me and stood in the doorway, wearing my flannel shirt like it was armor. The sight did something inconvenient to my heart. I'm not going with you, she said. Preston stared at her. You're being emotional. Yes, she replied. It's new. I'm enjoying it. I almost smiled. Preston didn't. He glanced at the clothes she wore, then at me, and something ugly flickered over his face. Did he touch you? Marin went pale. I stepped forward, but she lifted a hand, stopping me without looking. No, she said. And that question is why I should have left sooner. The rain grew louder. Preston breathed through his nose. Your mother is hysterical. My mother will survive disappointment. She's had years of practice giving it to me. This time, I did smile. Marin saw it from the corner of her eye, and despite everything, her mouth curved. It was the smallest shared rebellion. A match struck in the dark. Preston noticed. You think this is funny? He asked me. I think she's doing fine without me. That unsettled him more than a threat would have. He looked back at her. If you stay here tonight, don't expect things to go back to normal. Marin's shoulders lifted with a slow breath. Good. A long silence. Then Preston reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. I'll call your father. Do that, she said. Tell him I'm safe. Tell him I'm dry. Tell him I'm drinking terrible coffee with a man who asked what I wanted before deciding for me. Preston's face flushed. I leaned against the doorframe. For the record, the coffee has character. It has trauma, Marin said. I looked at her. You drank 2 sips. I'm brave. Reckless, apparently. Her eyes met mine, and in the middle of that cold porch standoff, something warm moved between us. Not gratitude, not rescue, interest. Preston saw it too. His mouth flattened. This isn't over, he said. No, Marin answered softly. But we are. She reached into the pocket of the flannel, pulled out the ring, and held it out to him. He didn't take it, so she set it on the porch railing between them. The diamond caught the porch light, bright as ice. I'm sorry I waited until tonight, she said, but I'm not sorry I left. Preston stared at her a moment longer, then turned and walked back into the rain. His headlights reversed down my drive, carving 2 red lines through the dark until the storm swallowed them. Only when they were gone did Marin sag. I shut the door and turned to find her standing very still, both arms wrapped around herself. You did it, I said. She gave a shaky laugh. Did I look heroic? You looked terrifying. Good. Then her face crumpled. I crossed the kitchen before thinking better of it. Marin, I'm fine. Her voice broke on the word. I am. I wanted that. I chose that. Why do I feel like I just jumped off a bridge? Because you did? She looked up. I stopped close enough to feel the cold coming off her wet hair. Freedom still has a fall? Her eyes shone. For a second, I thought she'd step back. Instead, she stepped into me. I wrapped my arms around her because she chose to be there. Because she tucked her forehead against my chest like she was tired of holding up the whole sky. Because my name had been written in her grandfather's dying hand, but this moment belonged to her. She smelled like rain, coffee, and something faintly sweet beneath the storm. I don't want to be weak, she whispered. You're not. You don't know me. I know you handed a man his ring back while wearing borrowed sweatpants. That's a strong opening chapter. A laugh shook against my shirt. My hand moved once over her back, slow and careful. You can fall apart in this kitchen, Marin. Doesn't mean you're broken. Her fingers curled in the fabric over my ribs. No one has ever said things like that to me. I tried for a joke because the softness in her voice was making me want things I had no right wanting yet. I can also say practical things. The guest room sheets are clean, mostly. She leaned back enough to look at me. Mostly? I own a ranch. Perfection is for men with manicure appointments. Her gaze dropped to my mouth, only for a heartbeat, but I felt it like a hand. Then she looked away, cheeks pink. Daniel. Yeah? If I stay tonight, I need it to be because I chose to, not because you feel responsible. I know. And if I stay tomorrow, my pulse kicked. Then tomorrow we talk about tomorrow. She studied me, searching for the trick, the trap, the price. There wasn't one. Finally, she nodded. Okay. I stepped back before I forgot myself completely. I'll get those mostly clean sheets. As I passed the table, I saw Walter's letter lying open beside 2 mugs of bitter coffee. I picked it up carefully. Marin watched me. My father kept letters in a cigar box, I said. From men he trusted. Walt wrote him a few. Her face softened. You have them? In the study. Could I see them sometime? The question was quiet, almost shy. Not because she wanted history, I realized. Because she wanted another piece of the grandfather she'd lost, something in me gave. Now, if you want. It's late. I'm up. You were eating a sandwich over the sink at midnight. I was living a rich, private life. That smile came back. And because neither of us seemed ready to let the night end, I led her into my father's study. The room smelled of leather, dust, and old paper. I opened the cigar box on the desk. Inside were photographs, postcards, and letters tied with baling twine. Marin stood close as I untied them. Her shoulder brushed mine. Neither of us moved away. I found one with Walter's blocky handwriting. Daniel's boy has your stubborn eyes, Walt had written to my father. God help anyone who tries to make him sell that land. Marin touched the page with 2 fingers. He remembered you as a boy. I barely remember him. He didn't barely remember you. Her voice was tender enough to hurt. I looked down at her. Marin. She turned her face up to mine. The study lamp painted gold along her cheek. Her hair was still damp. My flannel swallowed her hands. She had just ended an engagement on my porch, and I knew every reason not to lean closer. But she did it first. Not all the way, just enough to ask without words. I lifted my hand and brushed one wet curl back from her cheek. If I kiss you tonight, it won't be because you're scared. I know. And it won't be because of what your grandfather wrote. I know that too. Then why? Her eyes held mine. Because for the first time in my life, a man opened a door and didn't try to push me through it. My restraint went thin. I bent slowly, giving her every chance to change her mind. Marin rose on her toes and met me halfway. The kiss was soft, brief. A question more than an answer. But when she pulled back, her hand stayed on my chest. Well, she whispered. I swallowed. Yeah. Your coffee is still awful. I laughed, forehead nearly touching hers. Stay tomorrow, I said before courage could leave me. Not as a runaway, as my guest. We'll have breakfast. I'll show you the ranch. You can decide what you want with sunlight on it. Her fingers pressed once over my heart. I'd like that. Outside, the storm moved east. Inside, Marin Ellis smiled, like morning might be possible. Morning made Marin look less like a woman who had fled a life, and more like one deciding whether to build a new one. I found her on the back porch just after sunrise, wrapped in my old barn coat, bare feet tucked beneath the hem of borrowed sweatpants, hair loose over one shoulder. She had a mug of coffee in both hands and an expression of deep suspicion. You made this fresh? She asked. I did. And it still tastes like fence stain? That is a regional flavor profile. It tastes like a legal case. I leaned against the porch rail, grinning despite myself. You're cruel before breakfast. I'm honest before breakfast. Cruel comes after toast. The yard steamed from last night's rain. Beyond the barn, pasture rolled green and gold under the first light. Cattle moved like dark thoughts across the hill. Usually that view steadied me. That morning Marin did. She glanced sideways. You're staring. I'm admiring my coat. Liar. Yes. Her smile slipped in before she could stop it. I wanted to kiss her again. That startled me, not because the wanting was strong, but because it was simple. Clean. Not tangled in loneliness or obligation. I wanted Marin Ellis smiling on my porch in my coat, insulting my coffee because it felt like the house had taken its first full breath in years. Instead, I handed her a plate. Eggs, toast, bacon. She eyed it. Are you always this domestic? I'm a man of many hidden talents. Like making coffee that could strip paint? Exactly, useful on a ranch. We ate on the porch steps because she said the morning deserved ceremony. She broke a piece of toast in half and offered it to me without thinking. I took it and our fingers brushed. Such a small touch. It still made her go quiet. Sorry, she said. For feeding me toast? For noticing. I set my plate aside. You're allowed to notice. She looked at me then, guarded but hopeful. That kiss last night. I've been thinking about it. So have I. The words sat between us, warmer than the sunlight. I don't want to use you as a doorway out of someone else's life, she said. I don't want to be used that way. Her chin lifted. Good. But I do want to know you. Her breath caught. There, that was the truth of it. Not rescue, not destiny scribbled in an old man's letter. Choice, mine. I want to know what you read when nobody assigns it, I said. How you take your coffee when it isn't a crime scene. What makes you angry? What makes you stay? Marin stared down at her plate. I don't know that last one yet. Then we won't rush it. She looked up and her eyes were softer than I had earned. You make patience sound dangerous. With the right woman, it is. Her cheeks colored. Before I could lose all sense and kiss her on the porch steps, the barn cat chose that moment to leap into her lap. Marin gasped. The cat, a scarred orange tyrant named Biscuit, planted his paws on her chest and stared into her soul. Oh, she whispered. Hello. Careful, he likes rich women. I'm currently unemployed, possibly disowned, and wearing your sweatpants. He also likes chaos. Biscuit butted his head under her chin. Marin laughed and scratched behind his ears. The sound moved through me like music down a hallway. After breakfast, I gave her boots that had belonged to my mother and showed her the ranch. Not as a tour for a guest, as an invitation. We walked past the horse stalls, the tack room, the calving shed. I introduced her to old systems and stubborn gates. She listened like every weathered board mattered. When one latch stuck, she hip-checked it before I could help, and it swung open with a groan. She turned, triumphant. I would like that noted. Noted. Violent tendencies around hardware. Effective tendencies. We stopped by the south fence where the land dropped toward the creek. The grass was wet enough to soak the cuffs of her borrowed jeans. She didn't complain. My grandfather said your father refused to sell this place, she said. Several times. Why? I looked out over the pasture. Because he believed land remembers who loved it. And you? I used to think that was sentimental nonsense. Used to? My father got sick. I came home to help for a few months. I rubbed a hand over the back of my neck. A few months became 4 years. Then he died, and everyone expected me to sell. Bankers, neighbors, Lisa. Marin's gaze flicked to me. Lisa? Almost wife. The wind shifted between us. What happened? She wanted a life with clean shoes and reservations. I don't know. At the time, I thought I wanted her enough to leave. But you didn't. My father needed me. Marin studied me in that steady way of hers. And after he was gone? I laughed once without humor. By then, I didn't know how to leave. She stepped closer, shoulder nearly touching mine. That sounds lonely. It was. The admission came out rougher than I meant it to. Marin reached for my hand, not because she was scared, not because she needed balance. She chose the touch deliberately, sliding her fingers through mine and holding on. I looked down at our joined hands. She squeezed once. Maybe your grandfather wasn't the only one who sent me here. I turned toward her. Marin. Too much? No. My thumb moved over her knuckles. Just enough to make me forget how to stand. Her smile was quiet. The creek moved below us. Somewhere behind the barn, a cow bawled with no respect for romance. Marin laughed under her breath. Does she disapprove? She's jealous. I usually give her all my attention. You'll have to learn to divide it. I'm willing to practice. This time, when I leaned in, she didn't wait. She rose on her toes and kissed me first. It wasn't like the night before. That kiss had been a question. This one had an answer. Her free hand rested against my jaw, cool from the morning air. I kept mine at her waist, careful but not distant, feeling the warmth of her through my coat. She tasted faintly of bad coffee and strawberry jam. When she sighed against my mouth, I nearly forgot the fence, the cattle, the whole waking world. Then she pulled back just enough to whisper, I wanted to do that in daylight. My forehead touched hers. How was it? Better visibility. I laughed, and she smiled against my mouth. We stayed by the fence longer than necessary. By noon, she had mud on her boots, hay in her hair, and 2 missed calls from her mother. She showed me the screen as we sat on an overturned trough outside the barn, eating apples like teenagers skipping responsibility. I should call her, she said. Do you want privacy? Yes. Then she hesitated. No, I don't know. I held out my hand, palm up. I can sit beside you and mind my business badly. She placed her hand in mine. That might help. The call lasted 7 minutes. I heard only Marin's side, but that was enough. Yes, I'm safe. No, he didn't make me do anything. Mother, I am not confused. I gave the ring back because marrying Preston would have been a lie. Her hand trembled in mine. I kept my thumb moving slowly over her skin. Then she went very still. No, she said. Don't send father. Don't send anyone. If you want to speak to me like I'm your daughter, not property you misplaced. Silence. Marin closed her eyes. I love you too, she whispered, but it sounded like goodbye. When she hung up, she didn't cry. She looked exhausted. I lifted our joined hands and kissed her knuckles before I could overthink it. Her eyes opened. That, she said softly, was unfairly kind. I'm trying to be fairly kind. You're failing. Noted. She leaned her head against my shoulder and I sat still, letting her weight settle there. After a while, she said, My mother said I'm ruining my future. What did you say? That maybe I'm meeting it. My chest tightened. I turned my face toward her hair. Are you? She lifted her head. Her eyes held fear, yes, but also a spark that had not been there the night before. I don't know yet, she said, but I want another day to find out. You've got it. And maybe dinner, somewhere that isn't your sink. I smiled. Marin Ellis, are you asking me on a date? I'm suggesting you redeem yourself after the coffee. A noble cause. You'll accept? I'd be a fool not to. That evening, I drove her into town in my old truck. We ate burgers at a roadside place with red vinyl booths and pie under glass domes. She stole 3 of my fries and pretended innocence. I told her about falling off a pony when I was 8. She told me she'd once set fire to a linen napkin at a charity dinner because a senator was boring her. I laughed so hard the waitress refilled our water out of pity. On the drive home, Marin sat closer than before, not touching it first. Then her hand found mine on the bench seat. I'm not ready to know everything, she said, watching the dark road ahead. But I'm ready to know more. I laced my fingers with hers. That's enough. When we turned onto my gravel drive, my headlights caught a black sedan parked near the house. Marin's hand tightened. I killed the engine. A woman stepped out of the sedan, elegant in a pale coat, blonde hair pinned smooth as glass. For a second, I thought she was one of Marin's people. Then she turned toward the headlights. My stomach dropped. Lisa. Lisa Ward looked exactly as she had the day she left. Composed, beautiful, untouched by mud, grief, or doubt. I sat behind the wheel a second too long, Marin's hand still in mine. She looked from Lisa to me. Almost wife? Yeah. Of course she has perfect hair. Despite everything, a laugh escaped me. Marin's fingers loosened, not pulling away, just offering me the choice. I kept hold of her hand. Lisa noticed. Her eyes moved to our joined fingers, then to Marin's borrowed denim jacket, then back to me. Daniel, she said. Lisa. Marin leaned toward me and murmured, Should I wait in the truck? No, the answer came faster than thought. Her gaze lifted to mine. No, I said again, quieter. You came home with me. You don't have to disappear because someone else arrived. Something warm flashed in her eyes. We got out together. Lisa's smile was polite enough to cut bread. I didn't realize you had company. Marin Ellis, Marin said, offering a hand before I could introduce her. Lisa took it. Lisa Ward. Yes, Marin replied. I gathered. There was no venom in it, only a calm that made me proud in a way I had no right to be. Lisa turned back to me. I called first. My phone was in the truck. I would have come tomorrow, but I'm leaving early. She looked toward the house. Can we talk? I felt Marin shift beside me. Not away, just bracing. I hated that she knew how to do that. Here is fine, I said. Lisa's expression tightened. Privately? Marin lifted her chin. I can give you privacy if Daniel wants it. Both women looked at me. There are moments in a man's life when the past waits with one hand out and the future waits with nothing but trust. I chose. Marin stays. Lisa took that in. The porch light made her face look pale. I heard you're still refusing the offer, she said. So that was it. Not love. Land. There's no offer to discuss. Daniel, it's a strong number, more than fair. The developer is willing to pay above market because of the highway extension. You could be free of this place. Marin's eyes moved to me. Free. That word had hooks. Lisa knew it. She had used it years ago, standing in my kitchen with tears in her eyes, telling me I was burying myself beside my father. I don't want to be free of it, I said. Lisa sighed. You used to want more. I still do. Her gaze cut to Marin. Marin did not flinch. Lisa lowered her voice. You met her yesterday? Yes. And she's already standing in decisions you've avoided for years? Marin's face changed just slightly. I stepped closer to her. Careful. I'm not being cruel. I'm being honest. You attach yourself to people who need saving, Daniel. Your father, this ranch, now her. Marin went very still. That one landed where Lisa intended. Before I could answer, Marin spoke. I didn't ask him to save me. Lisa looked at her with practiced sympathy. Maybe not out loud. Marin smiled, small and sharp. Miss Ward, last night I gave back a ring that cost more than my first car. Today I opened 3 gates, got insulted by a cat, survived Daniel's coffee, called my mother, and asked him on a date. I am not a stray he found in a ditch. The corner of my mouth twitched. Marin glanced at me. Although the coffee nearly killed me. Still on that? I'm committed. Lisa stared at her, clearly unprepared for a woman who could be wounded and funny at the same time. Then she looked at me again. Softer now. I'm sorry. That was unfair. Yes, I said. It was. A silence spread across the drive. Lisa folded her arms. I didn't only come about the offer. I waited. My mother is sick, she said. I'm moving back for a while. I thought... Her breath caught, and for the first time she looked less polished. I thought maybe we should make peace. The anger in me loosened. Not vanished. Loosened. Marin's hand brushed mine once, a quiet permission to be kind. I took a step toward Lisa, not enough to leave Marin behind. I'm sorry about your mother. Thank you. And I made peace with us a long time ago. Lisa's eyes shone. Did you? I looked back at Marin. She stood under my porch light with wind in her hair and uncertainty in her eyes, trying very hard not to need an answer she deserved to hear. So I gave it to her. I did tonight, I said. Marin's lips parted. Lisa followed my gaze and understood. It hurt her. I saw that. But it was an old hurt, not a new promise. She nodded once. Then I won't keep you. Lisa. She paused by her car. Don't send anyone else about the land. A faint smile. Still stubborn? Worse now. Her eyes flicked to Marin. Good luck with him. Marin replied, I have a feeling he needs it more than I do. Lisa laughed despite herself, got into her sedan, and drove away. Only after her taillights disappeared did Marin let out a breath. I turned to her. You okay? I'm deciding. About? Whether to be jealous, impressed, or annoyed that your ex looks like she was carved from expensive soap. I laughed. Expensive soap? Smooth, pale, probably smells like lavender and judgment. She used to smell like vanilla. Daniel. Right, terrible detail. Retracted. Marin tried to glare, failed. Then her smile faded. What she said about you saving people. She wanted to hurt us both. That doesn't mean she was entirely wrong. I stepped closer. Marin, no, let me say it. She pressed a hand to my chest, also stopping me. I like you more than makes sense. And when you look at me, I don't feel managed. I feel seen. Her fingers curled in my shirt. But if I stay, it can't be because I'm wounded and you're honorable. It isn't. You don't know that yet. I know I wanted to kiss you this morning before your mother called. I know I laughed more today than I have in a year. I know when Lisa asked to talk privately, the only thing I feared was making you feel like an outsider in a place I already wanted you to feel welcome. Her eyes glistened. I covered her hand with mine. I don't want a woman who needs me to choose for her. I want you, the woman who left, the woman who challenged me, the woman who steals fries and insults my coffee like it personally wronged her. It did. I want you anyway. Her breath trembled. That sounded dangerously close to a confession. It can be one. She searched my face. Daniel, stay another week. The words came out raw. Her eyes widened. Not hidden, I said. Not trapped. Stay because you want to see if this is real when the storm is gone and daylight gets ordinary. And if I say no, I'll drive you wherever you want. And if I say yes, my thumb brushed her wrist, then tomorrow I buy better coffee. A laugh broke through her tears. That is a serious offer. The most serious I've made. She moved into me then, not collapsing, not seeking shelter, but choosing closeness. Her arms slipped around my waist. Mine closed around her. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. That helps? Strange woman. Terrible coffee man. I bent my head. She met me halfway. The kiss was not soft like the first or bright like the second. It was deeper, slower, carrying everything we had not dared say by the fence or over burgers. Her hands rose to my neck. Mine settled at her waist, drawing her close until there was no space left for Lisa's accusation or Preston's shadow. When she pulled back, her mouth was warm and her eyes were clear. A week, she said. My heart kicked hard. Yeah? Yes, but I'm not sleeping in your guest room forever. Every thought in my head dropped dead. She laughed at my expression and pressed a finger to my lips. I meant I'll need clothes, Daniel. I knew that. No, you didn't. No, I didn't. She kissed me once more, quick and merciless. Walk me inside before I say something else that damages your ability to function. I opened the door for her. She paused on the threshold. Not pushing me through? Never. She took my hand and pulled me in after her. We made tea because she banned coffee after sunset for public safety. We sat in my father's study, shoulder to shoulder on the worn leather couch, reading Walter Ellis's letters by lamplight. Halfway through the second bundle, Marin found a photograph tucked between pages. Two young men stood beside a military truck, filthy and grinning. My father and Walter. On the back, in Walter's handwriting, were the words, "If I ever have a granddaughter, I pray she meets a Hayes man before the world teaches her to settle." Marin traced the sentence with shaking fingers. I thought he was being dramatic, she whispered. My dad used to say Walt only sounded dramatic when he was right. She leaned her head against my shoulder. I kissed her temple. For a while we said nothing. Then my landline rang. Nobody called the landline unless they were old, lost, or bringing trouble. Marin lifted her head. I answered. A man's voice said, Daniel Hayes? This is Marin's father. I'm at your front gate. Marin heard her father's voice through the receiver. Her face went pale, but she did not shrink. Do you want me to tell him to leave? I asked. She looked toward the front window where distant headlights glowed beyond the cattle guard. For a long moment, the woman who had run through rain wrestled with the daughter who had been trained to obey. Then she stood. No, she said. I want to tell him myself. Pride hit me so hard I nearly forgot to worry. I drove her down to the gate in the truck, not because she needed escorting, but because she reached for my hand before we left the house. Her fingers stayed woven through mine the whole way. Her father, Conrad Ellis, stood beside a black SUV in an expensive wool coat, looking out of place among mud, fence wire, and wet grass. He had Marin's eyes, but not her softness. Not yet. When she stepped out of the truck, he moved toward her. Marin. She lifted one hand. Don't. He stopped. I stayed by the truck, close enough if she wanted me, far enough that her words were hers. Her father's gaze flicked to me. Mr. Hayes? Sir. I came to take my daughter home. Marin's shoulders squared. I am home for tonight, maybe for the week. After that, I'll decide. His mouth tightened. You don't know this man. No, she said. But he asked me what I wanted before you did. That landed. Conrad looked older suddenly. Marin, your mother is devastated. I know. Preston's family is humiliated. I know that too. And you think staying on a stranger's ranch fixes anything? No. Her voice shook, but it did not break. I think it gives me room to hear my own thoughts. He stared at her as if she were speaking a language he had once known and forgotten. Then his eyes dropped to our joined hands. I expected anger. Instead, he looked tired. Your grandfather always said we polished the life out of you. Marin went still. He said that? Conrad exhaled. Many times, usually at dinner, usually after insulting my tie. A laugh escaped her before she could stop it, wet and small. Her father's face changed at the sound. I thought he was old-fashioned, Conrad said. I thought he didn't understand the world you were born into. He understood me. Yes, he said quietly. I'm beginning to see that. Marin swallowed hard. I'm not marrying Preston. I gathered, and I won't be talked into it. I won't try, she blinked. Neither of us had expected that. Conrad looked past her to the dark shape of my ranch. Walter left me a letter too. I opened it tonight after your mother told me where she thought you'd gone. What did it say? His mouth twisted with grief. That if I loved you, I should stop confusing control with care. Marin closed her eyes. I felt her hand tremble in mine. Her father took one step closer. I don't know how to fix all the ways we've failed you. You can start by letting me choose. His gaze moved from her to me. I met it, not as a challenge, as a promise. I care about her, I said, but I won't choose for her either. Conrad studied me. Your father was Samuel Hayes? Yes. He once drove 3 hours to return a wallet my father dropped at a stock auction. Wouldn't take gas money. His eyes softened by a fraction. Walter never stopped talking about that family. Marin looked up at me, and the moonlight caught the tears on her cheeks. Not sad tears, freeing ones. Conrad reached into his coat and pulled out a small overnight bag. Your mother packed this badly and cried into it. Marin laughed again, covering her mouth. He held it out. Call her tomorrow. Please. Not because you owe us obedience, because she loves you badly and needs a chance to learn better. Marin took the bag. I will. For a second, father and daughter stood with a lifetime between them. Then Marin stepped forward and hugged him. His arms closed around her slowly, like he had forgotten she was not made of glass. When she came back to me, her hand found mine without hesitation. Conrad noticed, but this time he said nothing. He only nodded, got into his SUV, and drove back toward the road. Marin watched until the taillights disappeared. Then she turned to me, eyes bright. I'm shaking. I noticed. Not from fear. No, she smiled. From choosing. I reached for the bag. Want me to carry that? She arched a brow. Daniel Hayes, are you offering to carry my poorly packed emotional baggage? I've got strong arms. I noticed. The way she said it warmed me down to the soles of my boots. Back at the house, she set the bag by the door and turned into me before I could move away. Her palm slid up my chest. 1 week, she whispered. 1 week. And no promises beyond honesty. Honesty I can do. And better coffee. I bought none in the last 10 minutes, but I accept the mission. She smiled, then rose on her toes and kissed me. There was no storm outside now. No ring on the table, no man pounding at my door. Just Marin choosing me in the quiet kitchen, and me choosing her right back. That week became 2. 2 became a month. Marin rented the small apartment over the feed store in town because she said if she stayed, it had to be with both feet under her. She got a job helping a local veterinarian manage records and calls, which meant she came to the ranch at odd hours with hay in her hair and a grin on her face. We dated like teenagers and argued like equals. She taught me how to make coffee that didn't qualify as a weapon. I taught her how to mend fence, though she claimed the wire obeyed her better than it obeyed me. On our 3rd month, she brought a box of her grandfather's things to my father's study. We put Walter's letters beside Samuel's, 2 old men still conspiring after death. On our 6th month, I asked her to stay for good. Not in a desperate way. Not because I needed help with the ranch, or because some dead man had written our names on the same page. I asked her on the back porch at sunrise with biscuit winding around her ankles and a mug of decent coffee in her hand. I love you, I told her, not because you needed a man like me, because I needed to become the kind of man who could love a woman like you without holding her too tight. Marin's eyes filled. Then she set down her mug, stepped into my arms, and said, "Ask me again without making me cry into perfectly good coffee." So I did. "Stay with me?" She smiled against my mouth. "Yes." By the following spring, the ranch no longer sounded empty at night. It sounded like Marin laughing in the kitchen, like her boots by the door, like two mugs on the porch rail, one barn cat demanding tribute, and cattle lowing beyond the fence as the sun climbed over land my father had loved. We never did find out whether Walter Ellis had meant to play matchmaker or simply offer his granddaughter a road out. Maybe both. But sometimes, when Marin stood in the pasture with wind in her hair and my mother's old coat around her shoulders, she would look at me with that same challenge she'd carried into my life on a rainy night. "My grandfather said you needed a wife," she'd tease, and I'd pull her close, kiss her until she laughed and say, "He was right." Then she'd touch my jaw and whisper, "He said I needed a man like you." And every time, with her hand in mine and home all around us, I knew the only true answer. Maybe he wasn't wrong. What would you have done if a woman showed up at your door in the rain with a suitcase, a ring in her pocket, and your name written in her grandfather's last letter? Have you ever experienced something similar where someone unexpected changed the direction of your life? Tell me your story in the comments. If you liked this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.